Hey, good morning, New Life Church. My name is Michael Hogue. I'm from the Heber Springs campus. So we're in this series talking about the end times, and specifically we're going through the book of Revelations. I'm going to be in chapters 12 through 14 today. I'm not going to have time to read all of it. There's so much going on here, so I want to encourage you to take some time during the day if you want to read these chapters. There's a lot going on, and before we dive in, I just want to kind of set up like an overview with Revelation that a lot of things, it can be really confusing. And one of the things that we need to understand is that it's what we read in Revelation is not what's happening chronologically. Where it's happening or what we're seeing is as John sees it. A lot of different theologians, a lot of different Bible scholars break it into either 7, 8, or I've read 10 different scenes. So we're going to be talking about one specific scene or an interlude between some scenes, if you want to. And one thing that we need to understand fully when it comes to this, especially this one, is that God doesn't operate on our time. So we want to be very careful not to read this like it is happening on our time. So what we're going to do is I'm going to break down each chapter with some kind of key points, chapters 12 through 14. And then at the end, I'm just going to kind of talk about it all. Again, there's so much happening here. There's a lot of imagery. There's a lot of symbolism. Some of it is pretty straightforward. Some of it, not so much. So if you look at chapter 12 starts with the woman giving birth. Now, at first glance, this seems pretty obvious who this is. This is talking about Mary, but there's a lot of different things with it. You see she has a crown with 12 stars on it. Now, that actually is a reference to, and we see it in the dream that Joseph had, where he talked about the 11 stars bowing down to him, with him being the 12 stars. So even though the woman is Mary, it's representing so much more than just Mary. This is actually representing the church and Israel and Mary all at the same time. So we see the dragon. The dragon is Satan. The 7 heads represents the authority that he has. It's borrowed authority. We gave it to him. We see the child. Now the child is Jesus. There's so much of what we see here, like the dragon seeking to devour the child. You know, when you think about the story of Jesus, you think of how so many young children were killed trying to get to Jesus, but the child was snatched away from the dragon, it says. This is the Jesus and Mary and Joseph fleeing from the massacre to go to Egypt, to spend time in the wilderness, like it says here. And then it starts, I think in verse 7, it talks about the war in heaven. And it kind of breaks down all the things that happened. It talks about how Satan was cast out. And then it talks about how he's angry at the world, and specifically what he's angry at is it talks about the woman. But again, remember, the woman represents more than just Mary. This is the church. So this is the start of the conflict. This is explaining everything that's going on and the war, how it got started, etc. And then we get to chapter 13. Now, chapter 13 really starts with Satan's war on the church. But Satan doesn't fight this war on his own. He does it through 2 beasts. Now, the first beast is the beast of the sea. And if you look at the description of this beast here, it's actually very similar to the description of the beast in Daniel 7. You know, and that beast is actually represents the nations that ruled over the world as we knew it at the time. You know, this is the beast of the sea, is the state, the government, the not like Big Brother kind of thing, but this is like the control of the nations and stuff like that. What it really is human kingdoms that have rejected the living God from the center of their lives. Now, when they read this in 96 or so, whatever it was, AD, of course, they were thinking of Rome. And it did mean Rome, but it also means more than Rome. Any nation, I would say that is any nation that is rejecting the living God from the center of their lives. You know, power that no longer, I heard it put this way, I love it. Power that no longer resides under God will seek to play God. It also talks about how the beast was struck by a mortal wound, but it came back, this kind of fake resurrection kind of deal. And we see that, like whenever we see a great evil destroyed in the world, like the Nazis, it comes back. It might not look the same, but the same evil that was behind the Nazis in World War II is the same evil that's behind Hamas today. And then we have beast number 2. This is the beast of the earth. Now it talks about how the purpose of this beast is to get you to worship the first beast. That, the beast wants your worship. It wants you to worship him. It wants you to worship the dragon. Now, if the beast from the sea is the dragon manipulated political power, okay, then the beast from the earth is the dragon manipulated religious power. We actually see in Revelation 16, 19, and 20, it refers to this beast as the false prophet. This beast likes to encourage compromise. It likes to encourage compromise with the world and the way the world lives. It uses did God really say that? We're seeing that a lot today, I think, as well. And what I really love, as I was studying and diving into this, one of the things I read said that we don't fight the beasts by studying the beasts. We fight the beast by studying the real thing. The beasts just try to counterfeit. That's all they can do. But if we look at the real thing, then we can identify the fakes. Like if you're studying counterfeit bills and stuff like that, you don't study the thousands of variations of counterfeits. You become such an expert on the real bill, what it's supposed to look like, what it actually is, that anything outside of that you can recognize. And the last thing this chapter I want to talk about, because this is a big hot topic, all of you guys want to talk about, is the mark of the beast. And so the mark of the beast, it says, 666, that's a symbol. That's nothing fancy. It actually means man, 7 being the number of completion. 1 less than that is the number of incomplete. It means man, because remember, the beast just tries to mimic. In the last 10 years or so, I've heard at least 3 different, the mark of the beast is this, it's this, it's this. I've heard it's vaccines, I've heard it's neurochips, I've heard it's microchips that credit cards put in your hand. I don't know what it is. But can I just say that Satan is craftier than that? Like, this isn't going to be something where the government comes out and mandates and says, you have to put this in your forehead and you have to put this in your hand, because every single one of us would be like, not today, Satan. Like, we would recognize it. Nobody would be fooled. But what we actually see is the hand and the forehead is significant in how God shapes you. In the Old Testament, it's talked about a lot. They used to have the Shema, the law, that would have it written on something and they would wear it on their forehead. They would wear it on their right hand. Like it was something that they would have to carry with them. So they're constantly focused on it. J.K. Beale says, the forehead represents ideological commitment and the hand, the practical outworking of that commitment. So here's the thing, the mark of the beast is not a physical thing. It's not a tattoo. Like, I wish it were that simple. What it is an ideological commitment to the world and living out that commitment by how you live your life. It's living for the world, your ideas, your whole goal, your whole mindset is of worldly things, and living that out. Some of y'all are walking around with the mark of the beast right now. All right, and then chapter 14, I'm going to go quick through here. So it starts with great news. It starts with the Lamb. It starts with 144,000. Side note, some people debate on what that is, whether it's 144,000 of the faithful Jewish people from back then. Some people say it's a number of completeness. It means all the people that are redeemed. Whatever you see it is. And then you talk about the 3 angels. Angel 1, you see verse 6 and 7. He's going out to spread the gospel. You could say this is evangelism. You could say this is, because we don't do evangelism on our own. We have divine help with that. You could say this is the dreams that people from different countries have. Angels number 2 talks about how people are waking up from a drunken stupor from the wine, the intoxication that they'd been given by Babylon. And then angel number 3 talks about the wrath. It's a warning of the wrath of God. Now, if you don't think that God has wrath, then I don't think you really understand who God is. God is love, and he has wrath because he is love. Like, you want to see the wrath in me come out is when you're going to threaten the people that I love the most. If God was indifferent, he would have no wrath. But since he is love, he does have wrath. And what we see in here is that he gives the people exactly what they want. He gives them the judgment. We see in John 3:19, the judgment is based on this fact. God's light came into the world, but people loved the darkness more than the light, for their actions were evil. Hell is the absence of God. It's the absence of everything good, whether it's a physical fire, torment, physical suffering like fire and smoke, all that stuff like that. You don't know. People can debate. We'll figure that out at the end of time, I guess. But what I know, it is the absence of all things God, and God is the source of everything good. And then we see the two harvests. Now, the first harvest is clear. This is Jesus. Jesus is doing the harvest. He is harvesting everything, people from every tribe, tongue, and nation. And he's saying the harvest is now. The fields are ripe. But the second harvest is a little bit confusing. It's very ominous. We see the angel with the sickle, the angel who has power over fire. But there's a lot of symbolism that we see here. Specifically, it talks about, I want to go ahead and read this. It says, swing your sickle now to gather the clusters of grapes from the vines of the earth, for they are ripe for judgment. So the angel swung his sickle over the earth, and loaded the grapes into the great winepress of God's wrath. What's significant, one of the things significant here is you don't use a sickle to harvest grapes. And also it talks about the vines of the earth. Jesus says that I am the vine. It says the grapes were trampled in the winepress outside the city. That's symbolic as well, but I don't have time to get into that. And the blood flowed from the winepress in a stream about 180 miles long and as high as a horse's bridle. I want to talk about the blood. The blood that flowed for 180 miles. What's significant about that number is it's really close to how wide, or how long, I guess you would say, the Israel, Palestine, whatever region you would call it back in those days, it was that length. So what we're actually seeing is the blood river running as long as Israel is, enough to cover the entire region. This sounds so ominous, but if I'm being honest, I think this is good news. I think that what this was the judgment for our sins poured out onto the vine, which is Jesus. The river of blood, enough to cover all of Israel, was God's way of saying, look, my blood is enough to cover the sins of all of those who call on my name. Now, I really want to sum this up here and just talk about what this whole thing is doing. That John is spelling out the war. He's saying how it began, how it ends, and how we fight. And with the war going on all around us, what I want you to know is that you are not a neutral party. You're on a side. You're either on Jesus' side or you're on Satan's side. And it's so easy to be like, no, I'm on Jesus' side. But remember, the enemy, he doesn't want you necessarily just worship him. He wins if he gets you indifferent to the things that Jesus wants you to be focusing on. Indifference is on his side. So if you aren't fighting for Jesus and you're just sleeping, right? Are you really on Jesus' side? So I want to end with just super practical, are you on Jesus' side? Or are you on Satan's side? Are you living like Christ is the center of your life? Who are you praying for today? We don't fight the war the same way that Satan fights the war. We fight it through prayer. We fight it through love. We fight it through all the things that God tells us to do. So I want to challenge you this. I want to challenge you to be more active in your prayer life, specifically in the fight. In your neighborhood, I want you to pick 3 houses. And you don't have to know them, you don't have to tell them, you don't have to do anything, but I want you to pray for those houses. 3 houses in your neighborhood. Pray that God specifically would move in those houses, that God would be at the center of those houses, that God would bring things to their recollection that they learned about him as a child, and it will just come out of nowhere and they don't know why. And just pray that they will be spirit-led and have an encounter with Jesus that will change their life forever.